Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I'll do follow-ups from time to time on stories I've covered on this channel, and quite often it's like, oh, do you remember the video I did several months ago about the such and such? Well, here's one where there's a follow-up very, very quickly, and it's actually the person who did something in the first video doing the exact same thing again, allegedly. And so this one is strange, but I suspect there might be some other issues going on here. We'll talk about that in a second, but a bunch of people sent this to me from KIRO 7 News out of Seattle. Woman accused of sneaking onto flight without ticket, arrested for second time at the airport. So I did a story just a couple days ago about a woman who somehow managed to get through TSA and the gate agents got on board a plane without a ticket or a boarding pass. And they wound up having her arrested. And so that whole story happened. And now it turns out they say she's done it again. Lexi Herda wrote this. The woman was arrested for the second time in a week at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, days after she was accused of sneaking past security and boarding a Delta Airlines flight without a ticket. According to the police, the second arrest happened on December 27th when someone called to report a suspicious woman near Checkpoint 2. Now, I've mentioned that, in my opinion, what was crazy about the story was that two different groups of people apparently dropped the ball because she got through the TSA checkpoint, they say, by ducking underneath those ropes, and nobody saw her do it. And then she got onto the plane without a gate agent noticing she had no boarding pass. And I said, if I saw somebody ducking underneath those ropes to get around the security, I think I'd narc somebody out. Now, it doesn't say who called, but someone called. And officers say they recognized her because they'd arrested her just on Christmas Eve. When asked why she's back at the airport, the police say she told them she was picking her sister up, but did not have a ticket and could not list a real airline for the flight her sister was on. So she says, I'm here to pick up my sister. They said, well, do you have a ticket? They said, no. She goes, no, of course not. I'm picking up my sister. What airline is she on? Officers then tried to call a number that she gave them when they said, well, do you have a phone number for your sister? And she gave them a number, and it was not a working number. So according to documents, officers then showed the woman the security footage they had of her sneaking past the portion of security where TSA checks your boarding pass and identification. And she did confirm it was her, but then she said, I've already been arrested for that. And so it's unclear if she honestly thought that this is all one incident, in which case there might be other issues going on here, or is she so confused that she honestly thinks that she's still at the airport for the time she got arrested? Because the woman, once again, did not have a ticket while inside the airport. She did not list a real airline or have any proof she's picking up her sister. So they arrested her. And by the way, you know, if you're at the airport to pick somebody up, you can wait outside by the curb because the white zone is for the loading and unloading of passengers only. The arrest comes 3 days after the initial one, where documents state the woman was caught in another passenger seat on a full flight headed to Honolulu. So just as a reminder, that incident happened on a Delta flight from Seattle to Honolulu. And as a result of the incident, the plane had to be completely cleared of people, and a police dog had to go through it and check it. And then everybody else got back on, and it caused a several-hour delay on Christmas Eve. I assure you there were some disgruntled passengers on that plane. According to those documents, the flight crew realized there's a problem because they closed the door, and like a game of musical chairs, there's one person standing. And there should be a one-to-one correlation between the number of people on the flight and the number of people who are sitting in their correct seats. But there was one person who was standing who said, but I've got a ticket and a boarding pass. And the helpful people came by and said, oh, let's see that. And they look at it and they go, oh. Then they turn to the woman who's in the seat that's on the boarding pass of someone else. And they said, can we see your boarding pass? And she didn't have one. So they asked her what her name was, and she said, Smith. Smith. And it turns out that she didn't have any identification on her, which then led to the question, well, how'd you get through security and on the plane with no identification? And we talked about that before. She ducked underneath the ropes like she did this time, but somehow she walked onto a plane, and they say that she hid behind somebody else and nobody caught that, which is kind of strange. But like I said, I was kind of disappointed that it could happen. And as people have noted, especially in the comment section, that a lot of what the TSA does is basically theater. It's designed to make you think something's being taken care of when in fact it probably isn't, and a lot of stuff can sneak through. So I hope that this is a wake-up call for the people at TSA and the people who run it. I'm talking about the people at those, lecterns that check out your stuff as you go through. So there's a 3-hour delay for that flight, approximately 200 passengers who were delayed. And the woman at that time said she was from San Francisco and had come to Seattle via train to visit her boyfriend a few weeks prior. Now, of course, that doesn't explain why she's then on a flight to Hawaii, unless she's planning on visiting her boyfriend, then going to Hawaii, and then coming back to the airport to pick up her sister. I don't know. Now, I will tell you that when asked how to spell her name, the police officer who arrested her claims that she spelled her name differently more than once. And here's the tricky part. Her last name, as she told them, was Smith. Now, it's true. You could probably find a variety of ways to spell Smith. But as the officer wrote in his affidavit, based on my training and experience, not knowing how to spell a given name usually suggests that the subject is lying about their name. Now, if you've read police reports or affidavits or warrants and so on where they have to spell out allegations, they often do spell things out that are terribly, painfully obvious. And I've had people ask me, because I've mentioned these kinds of things in a couple different books I've written, and they'll say, but Steve, do they really need to explain that? And understand that some judge is someplace sleeping, and he gets woken up, and they say, hey, there's an affidavit here. We want you to sign a warrant. Here's a warrant. And so he's got to glance at it and read it. And by the way, a judge could be asked to sign several of these things at the same time in different cases. And so if they simply said, when asked to spell her name, she said such and such, it does actually help for the officer to point out. And by the way, the fact that she can't spell her own last name did indicate to us that she was lying about her name. So yeah, you're spelling out the obvious, but the point is that they do that. It is a common practice, and it doesn't hurt anything. If anything, it might insult the intelligence of the person who's reading the affidavit. But unless the judge says specifically, oh, by the way, you don't need to put that obvious stuff in there for me. Did it hurt to put it in there? No. So there you go. So this time, she didn't have the phone number for her sister. And the last time, she didn't have a phone number for her boyfriend. Because apparently they said, okay, who's your boyfriend? She told them. They said, okay, do you have a phone number for him? She said, yes. They called the number, and whoever answered the phone said, I have no idea who you're talking about. Don't know. So I suspect that there's something else going on here. Because a person who tries something, she got very, very lucky the first time that she got as far as she did. If you're just simply looking at success as being getting on the plane. And if the plane hadn't been full, she might have gotten away with it. She might have. But interestingly, here, she didn't make it as far before she got caught. So I made a note to myself, because I printed this out yesterday. I made a note to myself and wrote, Steve, actually I didn't write that, but I said, at least it's progress. Because this time, somebody apparently said, hey, somebody's acting weird. They ducked underneath things at TSA. And as I noted in my previous video, I would have thought that somebody would have spotted it and said, hey, by the way, just to let you know, that woman ducked underneath there and got through. And so don't know if anybody saw her the first time because they caught it on security cameras, but that was it. But at least this time, somebody saw it, somebody called it in. So if you see something, say something. But it's a crazy story. And like I said, I suspect there's other issues going on here. I know that in one of the reports I read, and I've now read 4 or 5 of these, one of the reports I read of the first incident, they said they were going to have her checked at a hospital to see if there's anything going on with her that might explain this kind of behavior, because it sounds like something's off a little bit. So thank you to everybody who sent it to me. From Cairo 7, or K-I-R-O, those are the call letters of the station. Lexi Herda wrote that. Woman accused of sneaking on the flight without ticket arrested for second time at the Seattle-Tacoma airport. Questions or comments? Put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. A hospital bed is a parked taxi with the meter running.